Good evening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special council meeting. I'd like to advise you that this meeting is being live streamed, audio and video recorded, and shall form part of the record, which will be retained in accordance with the town's retention bylaw. And for more information about this collection, you can contact the clerk's office. I'd also ask to remind anyone, if you have your cell phone on you, if you could please put it on vibrate or silent during the meeting so that it doesn't interrupt us. And I'd like to thank everybody in attendance and those that are attending on the live stream, and of course, staff and council. First, I would like to ask for a mover and a seconder, please, to approve the agenda as printed. Councillor Richardson and Councillor Zanella, all those in favor? That is carried. We have 3 planning applications that are being brought forward this evening. And we're going to, first of all, ask for disclosures of pecuniary interest. Is there any members that have pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none, I would ask, please, if the Deputy Mayor could read our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Your Worship. The town of Innisfil acknowledges that Innisfil is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history. The town also acknowledges that this land is the traditional territories of the First Peoples of Turtle Island. It is shared between the Anishinaabe peoples of Beausoleil First Nation, Chippewas of Rama First Nation, and Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation, and we thank them for generations of stewardship. This meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people, and as settlers, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. The town acknowledges the forced sacrifices that are the foundation of Canadian society today. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. And we have quorum, so we will continue. I would, though, like to extend Councillor Drodge's regrets. He was unable to attend this evening. So as I mentioned, we have 3 planning applications that are being brought forward this evening. 2 applications are for information and public consultation only, and no decisions will be made this evening. The other application, which is actually the first one we're going to be hearing, is for information and public consultation and is also being recommended for council consideration this evening, unless there are a number of concerns or questions that staff could not answer, and then we'll simply receive that one for information as well. The first application being brought forward tonight concerns a proposed amendment and a Class 1 permit to the Community Planning Permit System, Our Shores Bylaw, number 062-17 for 1130 Shoreview Drive in the town of Innisfil. This application is being recommended for council's consideration this evening. We will start with presentations from staff, and then the applicant will be invited to speak on behalf of the application. Council may have a few questions or comments, and then we will have an opportunity for public consultation where we will hear from members of the public. All speakers will have 5 minutes to ask your questions or express your comments, and then staff or the applicant will respond where possible. If they're not able to respond to your questions this evening, your questions will be answered in a further staff report that will come forward before council makes a decision. If you haven't been able to finish after your 5 minutes, once everybody's had a turn, then anyone can come up and speak for a second time. After all members of the public have provided comments on this application, council will consider recommendations should there be no significant concerns identified this evening. Council may decide to receive the item for information purposes only if there are major concerns. And for those who are not here for the first of the 3, I'll be following almost exactly the same script for the next 2. We'll now hear from our clerk, Patty Toma, on how public notice of this meeting was provided.
Thank you, Your Worship. In accordance with sections 1.4.4 and 2.14 of the Community Planning Permit System Bylaw, notice for this public meeting was provided by the placement of signs on the street and lake frontages of the property on April 25, 2024. Information and materials respecting the application have also been posted on the Town's Get Involved page.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Has any correspondence been received by Clerk Services concerning this item?
Thank you, Your Worship, and no pieces of correspondence have been received by the Clerk's office regarding this application. As well, Your Worship, members of the public may provide comment or register their interest regarding this item during this meeting or up until Council makes a decision by contacting the Clerk's office.
Thank you, Clerk Toma. We'll now hear from Darren Din, Development Planner, who will be providing a high-level summary of the application. Mr. Din.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of Council, staff, and the public. The first item on this evening's public meeting agenda is to consider a proposed amendment and a Class 1 planning permit to the town's Community Planning Permit System, or CPPS, bylaw number 062-17 for 1130 Shawview Drive. Next slide, please. The purpose of this application is to amend the town's CPPS bylaw to provide site-specific provisions and to request a Class 1 planning permit in order to permit 2 boat ports, a breakwater, a small changing building, and a permeable pathway extension. Next slide, please. The subject property is 1.7 hectares in size with a water frontage of approximately 103 meters. The subject property is outside of any settlement area and is occupied by an existing single detached dwelling. Surrounding land uses are generally residential in nature, with Lake Simcoe located to the north. Next slide, please. The concept plan shows the location of the in-water boat port, the on-land boat port, the L-shaped breakwater, the small shed structure containing a changing room with a washroom, and also the extension of the existing path. It also shows 2 docks which received council approval through a Class 1 permit for an increase in the maximum cumulative dock area and a Class 2 permit for an increase in the number of docks and the maximum dock projection in late 2023. Next slide, please. This is a 3D view of the proposed boat ports. The in-water boat port on the left-hand side will be constructed on top of the previously approved docks. Both boat ports require height variances. Next slide, please. The application was supported by a number of supporting documents as shown on the slide, which have been reviewed by relevant town departments and LSRCA. Next, please. Staff have done a detailed review of the merits of the proposed amendment and Class 1 variation specific to the criteria for considering variations contained in Section 1.9 and 2.14 of the CPPS, which are shown on the slide. Town staff have determined that the proposal meets these criteria, which has been detailed in the staff report. Next, please. So far, we have received comments from Town's Building Department and the LSRCA, which has been summarized here. Building Department has no comments on grading. A building permit is required for the washroom, boat ports, and docks once the amendment has been approved and the planning permit has been issued. Additionally, LSRCA has confirmed they support the proposed breakwater and path extension. The boat port structures will require a restrictive covenant registered on title. The LSRCA permit can be issued once the covenant and the remaining fee is received. The detached washroom will not require approval from LSRCA because the structure is smaller than 15 square meters. We haven't received any public comments regarding this application. Next, please. This slide provides a summary of the proposed bylaw amendment and Class 1 variation. The application is requesting to increase the maximum lot coverage for all detached accessory structures from 120 square meters to 295.5 square meters, to construct 2 boat ports on the property, to increase the maximum permanent cumulative dock area from the previously approved 114 square meters to 149 square meters, to permit the in-water boat port with increased height at 5.06 meters, increased length at 11.16 meters, and increased projection into the lake at 23.77 meters. It's also requested to permit the on-land boat port with increased height at 4.19 meters. So in total, there are 7 variations that can be considered by Council under either a Class 1 or amendment. Next slide, please. In terms of the next steps, staff recommend the council approve the CPPS bylaw amendment and the Class 1 permit this evening if there are no objections from the council or the public. Once approved, a Class 2 planning permit and an LSRCA permit are required for the proposed placement of the breakwater. The technical review will be carried out by town staff and LSRCA staff. As mentioned in the building's comments, a building permit will also be required following issuance of the shoreline permit. Next, please. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand that the applicant may be attending this evening virtually. Does the applicant wish to speak at this time? Hello, Mr. Reed, whenever you're ready.
Hear me okay? Great. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council Committee members. My name is Matt. I'm from Sketch Design Build, and I'm here, I was responsible for the design of this proposal and assisting in getting the permits for Chris Brand. As Darren mentioned, we're asking to build 2 boat ports, one on land, one in water, building a small shed, and building a new breakwater to protect the docks. I just wanted to note this is a very large property on Shoreview Drive. There is lots of distance between the neighbors and lots of privacy. And from day one, we have been working with the town of Innisfil staff on this design concept to make sure it's suitable for the lands. And today we are asking for a combination of 4 bylaw amendments and 3 Class 1 permits. And I just wanted to mention as well, Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority is in support of this proposal. And I'm available to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reed. If you could just hang on until we can see if council or the residents have any questions. Are there any questions from members of council? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 2 questions, probably both directed at staff on this matter. The first one is on one of the first amendments in terms of the maximum lot coverage for detached accessory structures. Standard is 120 meters. The Class 2 is 160 meters. We're allowing 295 square meters in terms of an increase. When do we ever say no?
Through your worship to Council Waters, yes, the standard requirement is 120 square meters or 10% of the total lot area. So in this case, because the property is 1.7 hectares in size, so the proposed 295 square meters is only count for 1.74% of the total lot area. So in that case, we consider it's minor in nature. So we can support that.
Thank you. Knowing the size of the lot would have been helpful in terms of determining how big that was to the entire lot. So thank you very much for that. The other question I have, was there any shoreline wave study done in terms of the impact of the breakwater on shoreline in terms of, because there's a point there, and usually around those points, a lot of sediment is carried in currents, and I'm just kind of curious if anyone did any wave studies in terms of what's going to happen to that point or to neighbors with that breakwater being there.
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Waters, because the applicant is proposing to construct an in-water boat port and L-shaped breakwater, so we request them to submit a coastal assessment, which has been reviewed by planning staff and also the LSRCA staff. And we have reviewed that, and based on the recommendation, we can support the proposal because there are limited impact on the Lake Simcoe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions and comments? Deputy Mayor Fowler?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm looking at this and I can understand why we're doing it because of the size of the land, but this boathouse, a portion of it is going into the lake. So how, like when we're talking 30% for the maximum lot coverage, plus 30% over the bylaw. We're talking 100% for the boat port. We're talking another 30% on top of that for the maximum boat projection into the lake. It seems to be that it's not just a small percentage going over 25, 30%. You know, what effect will this have on the shoreline itself in regards to people passing by? Like, will it? I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it. What about the quality that it presents of the community itself?
Mr. Ding?
Yes, through your worship to Deputy Mayor. So we review the proposal as a whole based on its impact on off-site. So when we review this proposal, we found they meet the required side yard setback. So we believe that the projection into the lake and the height have very limited impact to its neighbors.
Mr. Reed, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, sure. The water is somewhat shallow in that area, so that projection is key in order to get Chris's boats into the docks safely. And you know, with the lot size, 1.7 hectares, which is 17,000 square meters, whereas in the bylaw, like the minimum lot size is 7,900 square meters. So we're more than double the size of the minimum lot area, which to me helps justify, you know, these increases that we're asking for. Yes, some are 100%, but the lot's also, you know, twice the size of what the minimum is.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, follow-up?
Thank you, Your Worship. This one's for planning then. What is the potential for setting precedent, because we have the Our Shores bylaw in place, that someone further down the road wants to come in and say, well, I want a house that's boathouse just as big or a dock just as big? What is the possibility of that precedent being set by this? Is it a one-off, or is it something that we should be preparing for other people with large properties to bring forth?
Thank you. Director Lee?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, to Deputy Mayor Fowler. So each CPPS application has to be considered on its own merits. In this case, we're talking about the size of the property, the scale of the proposed development. That would be the same analysis that would go forward on every individual application to assess whether the particular lot in the area that it's located is appropriate or not, and we would analyze it from that perspective. So it doesn't set a precedent on its own, Deputy Mayor Fowler, because we have to look at them individually.
Any other questions? Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want council to know and the applicant to know, I've been by this property. It is a massive, massive property. There's tons of trees and space, and what they're asking for is a minimal amount on the property. It'll keep the land the way it should be kept down there. So I have no problem with this applicant.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll hear next from members of the public who have questions regarding this item. No one has signed up and registered to speak virtually, so I'll just go to those here in attendance at Town Hall to come forward to the podium and state your name for the record. I'll call one more time. Is there anyone here for this application on the shoreline bylaw on 1130 Shoreview? Seeing none, we'll now go to a recommendation to consider this application. Can I please have a mover and a seconder for the application, please? Councillor Saunders and Councillor Constantine. The recommendation as is on the screen. All those in favor of the recommendation? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. We'll now move to the second item on tonight's agenda, which is being presented for information and public consultation purposes only. And unlike that first item, there will be no decision being made tonight. It concerns town-initiated amendments to the Town of Innisfil's official plan concerning complete application requirements. We'll start with a presentation from staff, and then council may have a few questions or comments, and then we'll have an opportunity for public consultation where we'll hear from members of the public. The same thing goes, 5 minutes for your first time, and then if you want to come back up a second time, you're welcome to. After all members of the public have provided comments, council will receive this information. Should any member of the public watching the live stream wish to comment, they can email Clerk Services, and these comments will be provided to council and town staff and taken into consideration before council makes a final decision. You may also be added to the circulation list as an interested party, and you'll be updated on any further information regarding the item. The email will be listed on the PowerPoint during the meeting and is also available on tonight's agenda, which can be found on the town's website. We'll now hear from the clerk, Patty Toma, on how public notice of this meeting was provided.
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice of this public meeting was provided to required agencies on April 25th, 2024, and was published in the Innisfil Journal on April 25th, 2024, as well, in accordance with the Planning Act. Information and materials respecting the application were also posted on the town's Get Involved webpage.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Has any correspondence been received by the Clerk Services concerning this item?
Your Worship, no pieces of correspondence has been received by the Clerk's office regarding this application. As well, Your Worship, members of the public may provide comments or register their interest regarding this item during this meeting or up to until Council makes a decision by contacting the Clerk's office.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll now hear from Brandon Carrera, Manager of Land Use Planning, who will provide a high-level summary of the application.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Dolan, Deputy Mayor Fowler, Council, and public here virtually and in person. With this application, we're looking at a town-initiated official plan amendment, text amendment specific to complete application requirements. Often, and just as you heard, you have private applications. This is a town-initiated amendment. Next slide, please. So ultimately, the purpose of the application, the official plan amendment, is to facilitate an enhanced pre-application consultation process, what we refer to in the report as a two-stage consultation process, and propose changes to section 2216 of the official plan respecting complete applications. And you can see the full details in the report in attachment 1, as well as a red line comparing our current official plan to the proposed changes in attachment 2. Ultimately, this is really a follow-up to previous council reports where we brought forward our fees study and process review prepared by BMA Management, and this is one of our several steps to implement recommendations contained in that study to further improve the development approval process. The fees review study did recommend that the town establish a two-stage pre-consultation process, which would ensure that applications are ready to be processed before they are submitted to the town. It also is meant to provide an opportunity to clarify the application process requirements and ultimately help to improve the approval timelines, reducing the amount of circulations and modifications that are often required throughout the review of particular development applications. Next slide, please. And just a little bit more background, there's been a number of municipalities across the GTA and across Simcoe County as a result of Bill 109 that came forward with new two-stage or sometimes three-stage pre-application consultation processes. So we're not the first to bring something similar forward. However, the town of Innisfil is bringing forward an OPA to implement a process which would still allow the concurrent review and consideration of a variety of applications, including an official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and site plan. And if I could just clarify a little bit there have been other municipalities as a result of updates in legislation that have said you need your OP in place to consider the zoning, or you need your zoning in place to consider the site plan. We've had even recent files, and I definitely believe that there's often merit in having the site plan and that level of detail at the same time to consider the impacts and the analysis of the zoning bylaw. And as well, with the goal of this being an efficient process, it allows the overall timeline of development approvals to be done concurrently and as efficiently as possible. Ultimately, it's predicated and based around legislated turnaround times established in the Planning Act, ranging from 60 to 120 days, depending on the application type. Next slide, please. And so this is just a pretty simple graphic that sort of demonstrates for community and council what the two stages entails. Stage one, for lack of a better word, really is what we do today. It's because today we do have policies and we do have a process in place today for application pre-consultation, and it's a meeting and a follow-up record of pre-consultation which outlines which plans, which studies, and what initial feedback staff and agencies have on any particular development that comes forward. And so really what's new is the stage two, and in between stage one and two, we are also recommending a little bit more time spent between the applicants, their consultants, and town staff for engineering. And so just to, I guess, reiterate, stage one is where we sort of set the table with what plans and studies you're going to require, what might go into those studies. And if I can move to the next slide, which speaks a little bit more to stage two. Next slide, please. Stage two really is a review of those technical materials. So once they've had that stage one meeting, they go back to the drawing board with their consulting team and their planners and come back with that stage two submission, which will be circulated and reviewed by technical staff, including planning, engineering, and others, where we give a little bit more formal advice and cursory review of what might be missing, what might be could improve before they actually make their application. In the current state, if we take an application in today, a lot of those comments actually come out through the first circulation or second submission, second circulation. We're trying to get as much of that pre-consultation and as much of that input before the actual application is made. And the intent there is that when the application is made, we can avoid those third, fourth, and fifth resubmissions and hopefully be down to one or two, depending on the nature of the application and the issues on any particular case. And so ultimately, the municipality and planning will take lead in coordinating our review with any particular departments or agencies and provide that input up front to any applicant, any developer coming forward with an application to the town. Next slide, please. And so we did, given it is a pretty substantial change to the development process, we did meet with our developers liaison group, what we refer to as DLG. For anyone in the community a little bit less familiar, it's basically a liaison group with key stakeholders, key developers, Build, local developers, our conservation authority, as well as County of Simcoe, who all sits on this committee. We do regular updates. And so on March 21 of this year, we did bring forward our concept and our plans to bring forward a two-stage pre-consultation process, which was generally well received. There were some comments, which I think will come up on the next slide. It's also recognized that DLG and members today can continue to provide oral and written comments, which will be considered in the technical report. Next slide, please. So in terms of public comments, no memos or comments were received to date. So next slide, please. In terms of DLG, there's I think one slide missing. So I did want to mention as well, there's been no shortage and no stopping of updates in legislation. And so Bill 185 is referenced in the report, which may change some of the Planning Act abilities and requirements to make mandatory pre-consultation. And so we're closely monitoring Bill 185. It hasn't quite reached proclamation or royal assent. It's in draft and out there for comment, and it's something that we'll keep our eye on. But with or without Bill 185 or Bill 189, staff do feel that an enhanced and upfront pre-consultation process is best, not only for staff and agencies, but also ultimately for the developer community and our community as a whole. So we will continue to track Bill 185 to see if there's any impacts on the text that's shown in this report. However, we do think this is the best path forward. Next slide, please. And so in terms of next steps, we'll consider all input, and notice will be provided to anyone requesting notification or who submitted written correspondence. And next slide should just be my contact information. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me, or there's a QR code for our Get Involved page. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Correa. Members of council, questions or comments? Councillor Ices?
Thank you, Worship. Just a question regarding a bit about the process. As the process occurs, any applicant would be charged staff time as these applications are processed. With the changes to speed up that process, do we anticipate the costs will go down to the applicants through this?
Thank you, and through the mayor to Councillor Ises. It's actually something that the DLG brought up is what would the fee structure look like to have that stage 2 process, and would that impact the actual fees that are charged? It is something that we're taking a deeper look at as we bring forward the technical report. I mean, what I would say, you mentioned staff tracking and charging time. As part of that review and new fees brought forward from BMA Consulting and staff, we have moved to a fixed fee model for a majority of our site plans. As an example, a site plan or a zoning bylaw is subject to a fixed fee. And so the question that we'll have to spend a little bit more time and answer ultimately is, given that we are in a fixed fee model, which is built on our evolving best practices, what would the fee be for a stage 2 consultation? And I don't have that number for council tonight, but it's something that we'll be considering when we bring forward the technical report.
So at this point, we can't really comment on overall costs for applications prior to this change, and that you'll be getting back to us with what those new fees would be?
Through Mayor Dolan, like generally, when it comes to the actual application coming in, I would expect those fees to be relatively in line with what we approved December of 2023. The question is, how much would we charge for the stage 2 process? With the thought being, if you're doing less, I think what you're alluding to is if you have less resubmissions and less circulations, then that's what we have to see is how much is appropriate to charge for that stage 2, because currently we have a relatively minor fee for our pre-consultation. Other municipalities charge a little bit more considerable because they've moved to this 2-stage process, but it's something that we're evaluating ultimately to see how much is appropriate. But I wouldn't expect substantial changes to the actual user fee bylaw when an application is made.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Waters?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to congratulate staff. I think these are great suggestions to make the timing a little more efficient and better use of your time, because if you're having to redo applications time and time again, that's a waste of your time and costing us money. And I think the other thing I want to mention too is that the government makes us, municipalities and conservation authorities, looks like we're the villains in terms of slowing up applications, when most of the times it's bad applications coming forward to us. So I think it's important that we recognize that, and I think this is a great way to get those applications in order before they ever get to the accepting stage in terms of getting in front of us anyways. So I want to congratulate staff for spending the time and getting this right, and I really hope that Bill 185 doesn't undermine this, because I think it'll put a lot of pressure on staff to accept bad applications because we're under time restrictions. So I just want to pat everyone on the back for a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Anyone else? Questions or comments? My questions were quite similar to Councillor Waters, as a matter of fact. But if we pass this prior to 185 getting royal assent, do we still have to remove the second consultation?
Through you, Mayor Dolan. So, I mean, ultimately, the Planning Act will prevail. So if Bill 185 comes into effect and it doesn't require mandatory pre-consultation, then it might be slightly more encouraged rather than mandatory. However, we would go by the legislation in terms of what we can do. But that being said, we currently have policies in our official plan, and we're just really looking to enhance those for our overall development approval process.
Thank you. And I know it sounds counterintuitive to add another stage, but have it save time. But really, I think that that's what will happen if you get more complete applications. I'm not even so concerned about members of the DLG group. They're professionals. They work in many municipalities and they know the rules. It's the one-offs, it's the people who want to build an addition or a deck and they submit, pretty rudimentary application, and then it keeps going back for more and more submissions, back and forth, and then my phone rings because people get frustrated with the process. So just understanding it right off the bat, this is what you have to do, I think will help everyone even if it's somebody who's just doing it once. So thank you for that, and for anybody who is in the planning business right now with multiple rule changes. Good luck, because it just doesn't seem to stop. But thank you for your hard work. I see no other hands, so we'll now next go to members of the public who have questions regarding this item. I understand that nobody has registered to speak virtually, so we'll go right to attendance here at Town Hall. If there's anybody who would like to come to the podium and state your name for the record to speak about this item. And I'll ask one more time, the official plan amendment, please come forward. Please, absolutely. Yeah. Stand up, yeah. The mic should be on. If you could just state your name and your question, we'd be happy to answer it.
I'm Cheryl Birch, and I'm here for a totally different issue, but because it's come up, I'm sure this would have had some kind of effect on the situation that we are here for. So I just want to understand what the changes would mean in situations like that. And then I also wanted to ask, is there not something in place now where, or do people not have the opportunity to approach and ask these questions and get the clarification and get the checkbox, like the list of items that need to be submitted? Why would, what purpose would there be in adding a second stage and potentially more fees for someone? The one-offs, right, who are applying and don't necessarily know, what would the purpose be in you know, upping the cost?
Mr. Correa?
Through Mayor Dolan, great questions. I mean, the first part I think is when would it apply, and ultimately the policies would have to come into effect. So it'd be any application that comes in following those official plan amendment changes would be subject to a stage 1 and stage 2 process. But just to, I guess, put it in layman's terms, we do a pre-consultation process. It's essentially what we're calling in this report stage 1. We have a meeting for any particular site plan or rezoning application where we identify what types of studies, site plans, could be functional servicing reports, a whole range of plans and studies that they're going to require. They do have the opportunity to follow up both in that meeting and after with any technical questions. And oftentimes, although we have one pre-consultation meeting formally, there's a number of correspondence and a number of meetings that helps them build and create their submission. The stage 2 is not just a meeting or where we discuss, it's actually a submission where we take a look at what they've come up with from the stage 1 meeting, what they intend to submit, and we do a bit more of a detailed review, giving some input in what might be working well and what might be missing. And the goal of that ultimately is that rather than doing that at the first and second submission and having a really long approval process, we're a lot more detailed upfront with where we think there might be some discrepancies in what staff or what agencies are looking for. So stage 1 is really what we do today, and stage 2 is really more that submission of the actual plans and studies where we do a little bit more of a technical analysis and give a little bit more feedback. And that's why there'd be some level of fee associated with that, because there is work that goes into it.
So, but my point is that I have, let's say I'm putting in an application and I'm not 100% familiar with the process, and I need to know what information has to be submitted. I'm more than capable of approaching the town staff and asking, you know, what do I need to make sure that I have a complete application? What do I need to submit? And if there's anything like, you know, the Simcoe conservation permits and what order those need to come in, I can find all that information out now without a fee associated to that. So why would we even consider, other than a cash grab, to up the fee and add that process when that process is also already available?
Let me start, because I think I was the one who caused the confusion, and then, Mr. Correa, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So I actually think it will save money, because what we did in the past was we worked on an hourly rate. So however much time that staff person spent on your file, you got billed for that amount of time. So what we would have not continually, but sometimes people would come in with, you know, a sketch on the back of an envelope, right? And then it would be, well, no, you need a proper survey, you need this, you need that, you need this permit, you need that permit, you need maybe a servicing study, and that stuff would come back and maybe again not be completed. So then it would go back again. So the hours, the clock would be ticking and the hours were ramping up. By doing this two-stage process, I believe it will actually help people, particularly those who aren't totally familiar with the whole system.
Okay, so that clarifies, because I wasn't aware that the hours accumulated and actually went into that final approval. Like, that's when the permit would be granted, right?
Yeah, and so we're doing this second stage tonight because we had a review of all of our processes, and we had a company who said, you should be doing this, this, and this. And one of the things they suggested is get out of the ticking clock approval and just put a set fee on each thing.
Okay.
So we've done that now, we've just done that, and now this is stage 2, which was to put in this second consultation.
Okay.
And that also allows, because there's now also through the Planning Act, there is, once it's a complete application, the time starts ticking for our staff. If they don't have it completed in a certain amount of time, then we are penalized.
Right.
And that allows them to make sure that a complete application is truly a complete application when it comes in. It's just to be fair.
Okay, and that totally makes sense now that I understand the whole thing. My last question would be, on the other end, does it affect in any way how quickly the process moves from the application to approval to, all the notices that go out to the town and things like that? Does that change that timeline at all?
Mr. Correa, I'll let you take that one.
Through you, Mayor Dolan. I mean, ultimately, we have legislative turnaround times. What we've seen across the industry, across Ontario, is those are often well exceeded. Any file could still take a number of months, but ultimately, our goal is to be as efficient as possible and meet those statutory turnaround times, which is why we're trying to do as much consultation at the beginning of the process as we can. But ultimately, every application, it depends on the quality of the submission.
Okay.
Director Lee?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. Just to follow up on that, it won't shorten the timelines in terms of the notification requirements. So those, as Mr. Correa has indicated, are a statutory requirement. So from the time you get notice of an application, the opportunity to provide comments like you're going to do with the next application, that process doesn't change regardless of what we do with the pre-consultation proposal. This is kind of a front ending of the process on making sure the right information is there before that notice goes out to you to review.
Okay. All right, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the audience on that item? We'll now go to the recommendation to receive the comments provided this evening. So we're just receiving as information. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Zanella, Councillor Deputy Mayor Fowler, all those in favor? That is carried. Anyone who wishes to provide comment may still do so and may also register as an interested party to be contacted before this item is considered by council. Please contact the clerk's office at clerksoffice@innisfil.ca. Council thanks everyone for their participation and will now proceed to the final item on tonight's agenda, which is also being presented for information and public consultation purposes only, with no decisions being made tonight. This application concerns proposed amendments to the Town of Innisfil's official plan and zoning bylaw for 1065 7th line. Again, I'll roll through the same process. If you haven't figured it out yet, the Planning Act is very prescriptive on what we need to do. So please bear with me because you've heard this now twice. We'll start with presentation from staff and the consultant on behalf of the applicant. Council may have a few questions or comments, and then we'll have the opportunity for public consultation, during which we will hear from members of the public. All speakers will have 5 minutes to ask your questions or express comments, then staff or the consultant will respond where possible. Should anyone need to speak for a second time to identify an issue that has not already been raised or to receive clarification, they may be given additional time. After all members of the public have provided comments, council will receive all these comments for information, and all these comments will be considered, and when the staff report comes back for a decision, all of those comments with staff's comments will be in the report. Should any member of the public watching the live stream wish to comment, they can email Clerk's Services, and these comments will be provided to council and town staff and taken into consideration before council makes a final decision. You may also be added to the circulation list as an interested party, and you will be updated on any further information regarding the item. The email will be listed on the PowerPoint during the meeting and is also available on tonight's agenda, which is found on the town's website. Ms. Thoma, could I just ask you, is there a sheet out there where people can sign up to be an interested party? Okay, so if you're interested in knowing anything when this is coming back, please make sure you sign up on that sheet. We'll now hear from Clerk Patty Thoma on how public notice has been provided.
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice for this public meeting was provided to required agencies on April 25, 2024, and the notice was circulated to all landowners within 120 meters of the subject lands on April 23, 2024, in accordance with the Planning Act. Corresponding signage was posted on the property on April 24, 2024, and information and materials respecting the application were posted on the town's Get Involved webpage.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Has any correspondence been received by Clerk's Services concerning this item?
Thank you, Your Worship. 3 pieces of correspondence regarding this application have been received by the clerk's office and were circulated to council. The pieces of correspondence were from David and Carol Lambert, dated May 11, 2024, providing comments concerning the application. Ryan Fraser, dated May 14, 2024, stating his objection to the application. Marnie Adams, dated May 15, 2024, providing comments concerning the application. As well, Your Worship, members of the public may provide comments or register their interest regarding this item during this meeting or up until council makes a decision by contacting the clerk's office.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll now hear from Kirsten Morris, Senior Planner, who will provide a high-level application summary.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, staff, and members of the public. The purpose of this public meeting is to consider a proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 1065 7th line. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the applications is to facilitate a proposed development consisting of 47 3-story residential townhouse units at 1065 7th line to be accessed by a private condominium road. The subject lands are proposed to be redesignated from the residential low density 1 designation to the residential medium density designation to permit the proposed townhouse units and a total density of approximately 47 units per hectare. The lands are also proposed to be rezoned from residential 1 to a site-specific residential townhouse exception zone, applying to the proposed rear lane townhouses, which front on the 7th line, and the interior conventional townhouse units. A plan of subdivision application would be required following consideration of the proposed OPA and zoning bylaw amendments. Next slide, please. So the subject lands are located within the settlement area of Alcona to the south, on the south side of the 7th line between Webster Boulevard and Quarry Drive. The lands are approximately 1 hectare in area and have frontage on the 7th line. They're currently occupied by a single detached dwelling and accessory uses. The front portion of the property along the north front lot line is regulated by the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, and surrounding lands include vacant town-owned forested lands zoned open space to the north, residential single detached dwelling lots to the east and the west, and a stormwater management pond and residential subdivision to the south. Next slide, please. So here's a proposed concept plan for the proposed development. I won't describe it in too much detail because the applicant will also be presenting this evening. But this shows the proposed 47-unit townhouse development with 1 entrance from 7th line. The front 12 units will be rear lane townhouses, which will be accessed from the private condominium road. So the driveway or garage is in the back, and they front on 7th line, and then the interior units are conventional townhouse units. There's also a walkway proposed to the south, stormwater management pond near the residential development adjacent to the south. Next slide, please. So the applications will be reviewed by staff for consistency and conformity with applicable provincial, county, and town policies. Staff have highlighted the applicable planning policies that will be reviewed and detailed in a future technical recommendation report to council in the staff report for this public meeting. However, on a high level, these are the policies that will be considered. So the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, the Simcoe County official plan, the Lake Simcoe protection plan, our zoning bylaw, and the town's official plan. Next slide, please. So to date, these are the agency and town department comments received. So the County of Simcoe has noted that LSRCA should be consulted regarding natural hazard policies of the provincial policy statement, and the proposal would contribute to the town's intensification targets, and their waste collection standards were also provided. Simcoe County District School Board noted that they have no objection, and they provided standard conditions for a future agreement with respect to school accommodation and busing. They also noted and suggested that a crosswalk be added to facilitate safe access for students across 7th Line, and that the applicant should consider how students requiring busing will be accommodated on the site. Development engineering from the town provided technical comments regarding stormwater management and civil requirements. In services also provided technical comments regarding sanitary servicing, water servicing, and fire flow requirements. The Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority are requiring confirmation that the proposed development is outside of the hazard limit of the watercourse along the north side of the 7th Line through a floodplain delineation. And they also provided technical comments regarding functional servicing, hydrogeological, and Lake Simcoe protection plan requirements. And InPower have noted that the estimated hydro load and project timeline is required to be provided in order to confirm hydro capacity and requirements. Next slide, please. So we have received public comments to date expressing concerns regarding the proposed density and compatibility with the area, flood hazards, servicing and sewer extension impacts, parking constraints, traffic impacts, and safety. We also received notification that the public meeting notice sign had been removed from the property, so a new sign was installed. And additional public comments that we received today have expressed concern with infrastructure and servicing constraints to service the development, lack of amenity space in the development, lack of sidewalks on 7th Line, and pedestrian safety. Next slide, please. So in summary, the application is proposed to facilitate a 47-unit townhouse development with access from 7th Line by a condominium road. The development would result in an overall density of approximately 47 units per hectare. The official plan amendment proposes to redesignate the lands to residential medium density to permit the proposed townhouses and increased density. The zoning amendment proposes to rezone to residential townhouse exception zones to permit the townhouses, and also includes site-specific provisions for the proposed rear lane townhouses along 7th Line and the proposed conventional townhouse units at the interior of the site. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, staff will review and consider all public, council, department, and agency comments received and report back to council on a recommendation at a future meeting. Notice of this item returning back to council will be provided to anyone who speaks tonight or has submitted written correspondence. A draft plan of subdivision application is proposed to be submitted following consideration of the official plan amendment and zoning amendment by council. And if the official plan amendment is adopted by council and approved by the County of Simcoe, and the zoning amendment is approved by council, staff are delegated to approve the draft plan of subdivision application along with consolidated draft plan conditions. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. That's my presentation, and there's my contact information for anyone who has any questions or comments.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. We'll now hear from James Hunter, Senior Planner from Innovative Planning Solutions, on behalf of the applicant, who will provide further planning context for the application. Welcome whenever you're ready, Mr. Hunter.
Good evening, Mayor Dolan, Deputy Mayor Fowler, council staff, and those in attendance tonight. My name is James Hunter, and I'm an associate with Innovative Planning Solutions here in Barrie. We're here tonight on behalf of 219-7896 Ontario Inc., who is the applicant in support of official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications for 1065 7th line. So again, the subject lands are located at 1065 7th line, which is outlined here in red. They are located within Alcona, which is the primary settlement area for the town of Innisfil. And the subject lands have total land holdings of 1 hectare and 118 meters of frontage along the 7th line. The existing land uses contains 1 single detached dwelling and accessory uses, as well as there's 2 existing access points provided by the 7th line, and this is provided through a U-shaped driveway. The subject lands is approximately 68 meters to the west of the Quarry Drive and 7th line intersection. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. So the slide we're on now provides a further context of the location. So what we're showing here to the north of the subject lands is the 7th line, which is adjacent. Then also to the north side of the 7th line is Anne Maria Park, an open space, along with a public school, and generally we're considering that area established neighborhoods. To the east are 2 properties which are subject to future development, and then further to the east are residential neighborhoods and open space on the other side of Quarry Drive. To the south of the subject lands is a stormwater management pond, and this does have a public walking trail which does border that stormwater block. And then to the west along the 7th line are relatively low density residential uses, and then further to the west is a residential subdivision with single detached and townhouse dwellings, which is along Landstone, Kell, and Booth Avenue. Next slide, please. Reviewing the subject lands and surrounding land uses further, the subject lands again are within Alcona, which is the primary settlement area, which is a rapidly growing community. The neighborhood does contain various parks, trails, and open spaces to service the community, and pedestrian connections support active community engagement and contribute to the goals of placemaking. New development, including infill intensification, allows the creation of new housing options to sustain current and projected growth, especially more attainable options. Just quickly, what you're seeing on the slide there is an aerial image showing pedestrian connections, sidewalks, and also future pedestrian connections that we're recommending. So overall, it is a pretty interconnected community. Next slide, please. Again, for the subject development overviewed quickly by planning staff there, what we're asking for is approvals in support of a 47 residential unit townhouse development in 9 blocks with 3 to 6 units per block. We've eliminated the access to 1 access point from 7th line to direct all cars to 1 internal condo road. And the development itself includes 3-story built form, so highlighting that this is slab on grade design with no basements, as well as they're targeted for 3-bedroom units with generous unit sizes ranging from 1,900 to 2,200 square feet. So this could accommodate a variety of users and families, as well as the lot sizes range from 115 to 222 meters squared, and the frontages of each unit ranges from 5.5 to 10.5. To support each unit, there will be 2 parking spaces per unit, so that's a total of 94 parking spaces, as well as what you're seeing there highlighted in orange is an additional 15 parking spaces that we are providing. For amenity space, it's primarily through private balconies and rear yards for the traditional townhomes, as well as for servicing. This will be on municipal water and sewage services. As well as we've highlighted a green connection, so that actually shows the subject development and how it will connect to the open space block to the south. Next slide, please. So what's on the subject slide here are conceptual elevations, and these are the ones that are facing the 7th line with direct access along the 7th. So these are the ones that have rear lane garages with balconies above. It's an appealing design, and it is designed to have a consistent streetscape, which is the town intent through the policy, as well as we're seeking a modern contemporary design, hopefully to blend in with the future development of the area. Next slide. As shown on our site plan, we have interior units as well, so that's what you're seeing here. These are more traditional design with brick, contemporary materials, as well as these are, again, traditional. So these will have driveways for the house plus a garage, 6-meter rear yards, and also amenity space in the backyard. Next slide. Just to touch quickly on the landscape concept. So an intent of our application is to improve tree cover primarily along the 7th line and the borders of the property. So that's what you're seeing there in green is the landscape open space. And then of course the black circles are proposed trees. So we are proposing interior and exterior landscape buffers, as well as, again, through the subject site plan control process, which follows OPA, ZBA, and draft plan approval. Then the intent of this application is really to provide some enhanced landscaping on the property. Next slide, please. It was touched on by planning staff, but very quickly, again, Alcona is the primary settlement area for the town of Innisfil. So this is where a significant portion of forecasted growth and intensification is supported. So currently the lands are designated residential low density 1, and that's for primarily single detached dwellings. So to support a townhouse development, we are looking for official plan amendment, which will be going to the residential medium density designation. Next slide, please. Similar to the official plan amendment, we're seeking a zoning bylaw amendment to go from the R1 to the residential townhouse zone. So again, as townhouses are not permitted in the R1 zone, we're ultimately asking for the RT zone with special provisions to reflect the built form and site design. There are a variety of zones in this area, and it is evolving, so we expect that this to complement future development as well as the existing development today. Next slide. So as we just heard about tonight, there's definitely a provincial policy push and a lot of changes that are occurring right now. So collectively, what the province is seeking is to direct settlement areas such as Alcona, which is the primary settlement area for Innisfil, to have new population residential growth, and that's through ambitious levels of development. So ultimately, the goal is to create new housing options, and that's further pushed by Bill 23, which is 1.5 million new homes over the next 10 years. So what the provincial policies are looking for are more complete and sustainable communities, and that accommodates the needs of current and future residents, as well as a support for intensification while protecting natural features and functions, and also keeping viable agricultural lands away from development, as well as the provincial policies looking for compatible development, which maintains the general character of the community, but also logical growth is promoted, create opportunities for people to live, work, and play in their communities. Next slide. So without going into details, there was a number of technical studies completed for the application, including urban design and placemaking report, planning justification report, functional servicing and stormwater management reports, traffic and parking assessments, architectural elevations, site plans and other drawings, conceptual renderings, tree inventory, analysis, preservation, and compensation report, along with arborist drawings and landscape concepts. We had geotechnical and hydrogeological work done, as well as detailed topographic and boundary surveys. Next slide. So in conclusion, we're here tonight supporting the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications for lands located at 1065 7th line, which is in the primary settlement area of Alcona. To support the OPA and ZBA applications in the future, we will submit draft plan of subdivision applications, which is the process for actually creating the townhouse lots. We believe that the proposed development offers a compact urban forum that is directed to support intensification and efficiently utilize land, infrastructure, and services in an economical manner, as well as with ambitious growth targets by the province and the town, where they're seeking a variety of unit types and diversity in the housing market, supporting more attainable options such as townhouse to accommodate the needs of all residents. In summary, the proposed application does not conflict with provincial, county, and municipal land use planning, as well as we believe that this would be a logical and appropriate growth for the settlement area of Alcona. Thank you, Council. As this concludes my presentation, I'll take a step back, but I'm happy to answer any questions directed my way.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Are there any questions from members of council? Councillor Waters?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks very much for the presentation. I do have a few questions. My first one is, I don't see any parkland. So you have 47 houses there, families, because they're 3 bedrooms, so you're going to have families in there, and you have no parkland, no green space, except for a stormwater management pond, and you have stormwater management pond on the other side. So I'm just kind of curious, why no parkland?
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Waters. So the site plan itself does, for the interior units, have balconies and rear yards, which would service each townhouse development. I will be honest, speaking with planning staff, that is something that we are working through and considering as proposed for our second submission, as well as the subject land does have access through the rear yard, which would be the safer option than 7th line to other amenities in the communities. But ultimately, we would like to implement that or look at options with staff to how we can increase parkland.
Yeah, I would highly recommend that because you don't want to be sending your kids, off to another community, not another community, but it's about probably a 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk away to find some open space. So I think something immediate where parents would feel safe would be highly advisable. My second question is that it does seem that it's just kind of plunked down. You have single-family, large, rather estate lots on either side of you. So is there any opportunity to better integrate it into that type of community? Because on the other side of the stormwater management, the houses are a little more dense, but immediately around you, the houses are quite large. So I'm just kind of curious, is there any opportunity to lessen the impact? Because you're going to be driving along, it's going to have these nice big houses, lots, and then all of a sudden you're going to have something quite a bit different, quite a bit different streetscape. Is there any opportunity to I did notice you're going to put trees along there, which would be helpful, but just in terms of trying to make it a little more like what's around it?
Yeah, through Mayor Dolan, if I can ask the chair, whoever's control of the PowerPoint, do you mind going back to the site plan slide, please? Oh, that one, thank you. So that's a very good point. So 2 parts to this. We do represent the landowner who has the 2 properties adjacent to the right, which is the east. We expect a similar development to happen there. Integration in that component is being covered. On the west side of the property, there are larger single detached lots located there, but that played an important factor in us orientating the development. So as you can see, a lot of the townhouse units are pushed either to the north, which is the 7th line, or to the south, the rear yard. There are some units above the orange parking, which could be parkland, and that would add to the compatibility, but we did try to keep the density away from that. Another important component of this application is that if you look at Alcona and a lot of areas that we're experiencing as a whole for growth, this is a 1 hectare property, which is an extremely rare property to find of this size. So logically, these are the properties that will be targeted for growth, especially in a scenario where we have to the south a stormwater pond, no impacts to the east, no impacts with the compatible development coming in, 7th line to the north and EP lands there, and then to the west, we're doing the best that we can. But this is part of evolving communities and supporting new growth.
Thank you. And just one final question, if I may. It's more directed at staff. Often ask about community benefits, and I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, the houses which are to the west, the larger houses, are they on water and sewer, or are they not?
Through the mayor to Councillor Waters, I don't believe so. I would have to confirm that, though, within services.
So, like some of the other subdivisions we've looked at, the one on the 25th by Sandy Cove, is we have a lot of existing communities which don't have sewers, may have water but have no sewers. That we should be looking at some sort of community benefit when these types of developments go in, especially when we're allowing higher density, is to see whether or not if these residents would like to have sewers, that they get hooked up at no cost or a discount to them for that. So that way we don't have these holes in Innisfil where we have people who are getting services and those not getting services. So part of the community benefit to the existing community should be better services via water and sewers. So just something to consider with these types of applications. Thank you.
Any other questions, members of council? Councillor Saunders?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was actually just by this property, and you keep saying it's 1 hectare, which is only 2.5 acres. Don't get me wrong, but how are you going to jam 47 townhouses in 2 acres? There's safely, I'd have to ask Brent, the chief, for the fire trucks and emergency vehicles and stuff like that. But I have absolutely no idea how you're going to put 47 houses on that property.
I don't think that was a question. I think that was a comment. So we'll just move on. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. When we think of different types of housing in the community, often when the densities get higher, phrase affordable becomes part of the equation. I haven't heard that comment in any of this, your presentation. Can you give us an idea of maybe price points on these accommodation and perhaps what we might anticipate there?
Through your worship to Councillor Icy, so this project for us started during COVID when building costs and price of housing was much higher. We haven't evaluated it since that time, so I kind of get that answer to you. I do not have the price at its time. Using the word affordable by definition is meaning affordable. There's price points that you have to hit. We're using the word attainable since we do not know the exact price point. But if you look around Nakona, there really is not a lot of attainable housing options for those looking to downsize or get into the market. So unfortunately and fortunately, this is a product that has become one of the more affordable ones unless we look at much higher densities, including condominiums.
Another question I had was maybe to get a comparison of the density that you're proposing versus the densities that are in the neighborhood. Just looking at the slides, I saw an R, and this question might be more to staff. I seen an R1 density, which are the detached properties to the east and west. And then I saw an R2, which was more the subdivisions in the back. Can we compare densities between those three zones just to get an idea of how they compare?
Through Mayor Dolan to Councillor Ices, yes, we can certainly provide a comparison of the densities.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. My questions more revolve around how the affected area will be surrounding the subdivision. On the blueprints here, it says that at one point to the edge of asphalt is approximately 12.8 feet. The green space beyond the chain link fence. Is that the pathway, or are we looking at the edge of 7th line itself?
Sorry, through the mayor, are you speaking of the walkway at the south end of the?
No, I'm speaking on the north end, just where it, for example, just to the left of where it says Part 11, Plan 51R-30496, you can see where it says edge of asphalt on the documentation itself. Now, my question is that the pathway that goes on the south side of 7th line, or are we talking the actual 7th line itself? Because it's not clarified in the document.
Through the mayor to Deputy Mayor Fowler, I think I'd have to take that back and review it further because I can't find it on the document.
So on the page
13, 14.
13 of the document, it's right after the key map. The next page down, it looks like the site plan. But yeah, absolutely, you can take
Through the
that
mayor
back.
to Deputy Mayor Fowler, we will take that back and confirm if that's edge of road or the sidewalk.
So this leads into the second question I have. If it is the edge of the property, like the edge of 7th line, I know that we're in the process of doing the widening of 7th line from 20 Side Road all the way down to Lake Simcoe. This property here, it borders right up on it. So I know we're widening the ditches, and I know that we're with the poles and everything else being in place and moved. How will there be plans, because we're putting so many people in a tight space? We're looking at families being there, and kids are going to walk, and the only option they have at this moment in time is the shoulder of the road, if that's the case, or the 6-foot path or 5-foot pathway at the southern end. So that brings up another question I'm going to be asking. So is that taken into account with the planning department for future growth because of how close it is to being done as we're going through the process currently?
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, thank you, through worship, to Deputy Mayor Fowler. So it is hard to see on this plan. The edge of asphalt is the existing road. There's a 3.9 meter setback to that. Then that's accounting for future widening. And then we've set the townhouses a minimum of 4 meters back from that. So we worked with engineering staff on that through consultation, but that is something that will be reviewed through the process as we account for those future upgrades.
So for clarification, you're stating that this is not the existing asphalt, but with the widening of the road being planned, that's where you expect it to be?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. That's now back to staff. When we come to the 7th, of the widening of the 7th, at this point, again, I'm going to ask about sidewalks. With the 13-foot space, with the widening of the ditches, is the sidewalk planned roughly for this area? Is it part of the project when it comes to this?
Through you, Mayor Dolan, to Deputy Mayor Fowler. So we can confirm with the capital team that the sidewalk would be within that 3.9 meters that's being contemplated, and ensure there's alignment between the capital project and this proposal.
Thank you. All right, and one last question then. If people choose not to walk on the north side, because kids are going to take the shortest route to Lake Simcoe Public School, if they are going to be attending that, with a 5-meter walkway down the back, the moment they leave the property line, they go into the stormwater management pond, who takes accountability, or does the town under any liability for that? Because shouldn't be maintained during the winter, as I understand it's not maintained, it's a naturalized path. Has that been brought into question, and is it been brought into something that could be put into future development to give children an alternative to a potentially safer path to the streets?
Ms. Morse?
Through Mayor Dolan to Deputy Mayor Fowler, that's certainly something that will be considered. It was brought up in the public comments received as well. So we will be reviewing that, and we'll come back through our technical recommendation report with a response on that.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? I wanted to ask a little bit about the interior roadways, Mr. Hunter. So they're private roads, so they would be maintained, plowed by a private company. They're 6 meters wide, so if people decided they wanted to park on the road, would it be our bylaw that would come, or who would be the person that would be responsible for keeping cars off the road, because 6 meters doesn't really give you room to put a car?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. So the way we designed the site is intended to have no parking on the road. There's 1 parking space in the driveway, 1 in the garage, which is 15 additional visitor spaces. That meets the standards with some exceptions. So I would like to take that back, because it's a very good question. This will be, the roads will be in a common corporation. It is responsible for controlling, upkeeping, and managing them. But I believe it would be by law that would come in. I don't want to answer that 100%, but we would put something in place, if that makes you feel comfortable, to ensure that that does not happen.
Thank you. And it was kind of coincidental. I was reading tonight in the city of Barrie, there was a 6 meter wide road and a sidewalk on one side, and one of the councillors was recommending that the sidewalk be removed from the plan of subdivision so that another vehicle could park in the driveway, because although you say there's 2 parking spots, let's face it, who parks in their garage? I mean, most people don't, right? It's a snowmobile, it's the grass mower, it's the big recycling cans. So just wanted to bring that up, if you could address that, because I noticed there is sidewalk on a couple of on at least one street, on the side street. And then the last about the street is just the 1 entrance and 1 egress. So have first responders not had a concern with only, like if that 1 access is blocked, how would they enter the site?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Dolan. I can take you a second on that one. It's a very good question. We did the one access point because that was the safest option to control traffic on and off the 7th line. There is a stormwater block, which is located at the very northeast corner of the site. If they had to get in, they could come through there. As well as I will point out, you can't see it now, there's we'll call it a dead end to our road, which we plan to connect into the adjacent development. So ultimately, you would have at least 2 access points for trucks itself, as well if they needed to. The hose distance could reach, as we have 85-meter deep site, which is within their regulations, I believe. So 2 points.
Sorry, did I hear you say you just had the one property to the east or the 2 properties to the east?
The 2.
The 2 properties to the east. So timeline for bringing those forward as far as completing the...
Yes, thank you, Mary Jo. To be blunt, we were working on this one to ensure that we had proper integration into that one. So that one is an ongoing file, which will be before you guys very shortly. But we wanted to make sure that we were comfortable with this design so that we could integrate both developments together before having to more piecemeal developments.
And when the report comes back, can we have a piece on how that might be integrated? How many units are there? Like just to kind of get the big picture instead of one piece at a time. And the stormwater management pond to the south, was that sized for this type of subdivision? Like that was built by another developer, I understand. So has it been sized for, are you utilizing that one? Or I noticed you had that one block at the front, at the top, at the north.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So that pond is for the development to the south. We have not accounted for that. That is because all of our flows will be directed actually to a holding tank and then treated into the sanitary system and the water services through municipal. So there could be natural drainage that could occur there, but there's nothing that will be actually directed through our stormwater management plan to that block.
Thank you. And one final thing for staff, if we could, we've had a presentation from Capital Engineering on the 7th line. There was a talk about the trail that would go north to Anna Maria, but it would be good to know again the timing of that versus the timing of this, showing that map that you'd think it might already be there and it's not. So it would be nice to have that integrated as well. Those were all my comments. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll now go to the public. We'll hear from members of the public who have questions regarding the item. No one has registered to speak virtually, Madam Clerk. So I'll call on those in attendance here at Town Hall to come forward to the podium and state your name for the record. As a reminder, if you could try to keep around 5 minutes, and then if you want to come back a second time after everybody's had a turn, you're more than welcome. Whenever you're ready. Anyone? Someone has to go first.
My name is Jay Esteves. I have a question to the city. So you guys are gonna make 7-line a parking lot? Because the way I see it, 47 units, there's no space inside because it's me, my wife, and my father-in-law, we have 5 cars. So those people, they have kids, they're gonna grow. So those kids are gonna have cars. Where are they gonna put all those cars on such a small, tiny place? And I don't see 7-line like a subdivision. I see 7-line like a small place, like, a couple houses, or if they build like 4 or 5 houses, not place, okay, I understand. But 47 units, that's an absurd. Like, I don't understand 47 units in such a tiny place. So my question is, when are you guys gonna do the parking lot on 7-line? When are you gonna do the parking space for everybody? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, we didn't catch your name. Could you?
Jay Esteves.
Jay Esteves, thank you. Next. Welcome.
My name is Adrienne Wedgwood. I live at 1027 Muriel Street. My house backs onto the storm pond that is being referenced, this property is going to back onto. I have a few concerns. First of all, I've lived in this area. We moved up from Brampton back in 2006. and we've lived in our subdivision that whole time. At the corner of 7th Line and Webster, at the northeast corner, there has been, it looks like it's been zoned already for some sort of housing. There are like drainage pipes there. Even down on Jans and Webster, when you turn to go towards the high school, there's vacant land right now where the curbs have been cut out for housing, but no housing has ever been built. Additionally, there was a townhouse subdivision, I believe, proposed on the west side of Webster and 7th Line that has never been developed. The land's been up for sale. I think it just recently sold. I'm not sure. My question is, we've been under persistent development in our area for the whole time that I've lived there, and I know I was part of that initially. However, those lots have remained vacant. They've never been developed. Why are we considering putting 47 townhouses on something that is currently zoned for residential, one single-family dwelling, or zone 1? I think when I was looking it up, it said maybe up to 12 units. But to change it to 47 is very substantial when we already have other areas that clearly have been zoned to accommodate housing that haven't been developed. That's my first comment, I guess, or a question to you that maybe you could consider when you're looking at this a little bit more. The concerns about the sidewalk on 7th Line, I frequently take my dog for a walk with my family down to the beach at the end of 7th Line. We have noticed habitat in that little stream on the north side. Last year there was an otter there. We've seen salmon swimming upstream there. There's lots of ducks. There's always concern when you increase traffic and bring that to an area. I am just as guilty for sprawl because I bought in a subdivision on what was previously farmland. However, 47 townhouses on one small lot in that area, I think is definitely there should be some investigation into the environmental impact that could have on that. All the water drains into the lake. We use that lake to swim in, fish in. They fish on it in the wintertime. That, I think, could be another issue that should be considered, and I hope is being looked at a little bit more carefully. We're constantly encroaching on our environment, and I think that that's something that it should be considered. Even the storm pond that we have behind our house, there were significant issues with it throughout our development. The drains would get plugged from the cement and all the dust and dirt while they were building, and they've had to drain it when there was wildlife living in it. Like, it was a lot that poor little pond has gone through. It's finally developing into a really nice naturalized habitat. People use it to walk their dogs. The talk about the pathway from this 47 house development so that they have an easier way to get to the school, that's going to increase a lot of foot traffic in that naturalized habitat. I have concerns because as a resident who lives along that, I do pick up after my dog, but not everybody does, unfortunately, or they do and they like to toss their bags of poop into the trees in the area. There's no garbage cans located. No one's responsible for picking or cleaning anything up in that area. So if this is something that is being considered, the township's going to have to take some responsibility over the area, which I gather you might be hesitant to do because it is a storm pond and there are other risks involved with children around water that I think need to be considered as well. And I think that might be it. Oh, and the other concern I have with 7th Line, you mentioned widening it. I also hope that it is maintained a little bit better. Even the intersection that I drive through to get to work every day, when I turn onto 7th Line off of Webster, there's constantly potholes. It can't handle the traffic it already is receiving. And when they did do a paved job there within the past couple of years, it was like a patch. They kept the middle and then paved around it. It's not conducive. The road is literally falling apart. So I don't know that having 47 townhouses added to this area is going to help relieve any of those problems, personally. Anyways, I hope this makes it a little bit easier for other people to approach. Please speak up, because if we don't have a voice, this will go through. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to tell you, I'm sorry, did we get your name again?
Adrienne Wedgwood.
Adrienne Wedgwood. We did just today get an email from planning that There was a complete application for 1761 Webster, which is, I think, that piece that you're talking about. So stay tuned. There'll be a public meeting for that coming in the relative near future. Regarding the property across from Nantyre Shores, I have no answer on that. That's the Orsi development that's been there for 30 years. But I don't know the answer to that one. Thank you so much for your comments. Yes, sir.
My name's David Lambert. You already have a letter from me. That property, Orsi property, I built my house, I'm the person immediately to the west of this mess. So I think I have the most to lose. The property is right now, none of the properties there have sewer control, because it was directed up, went through a quarry, out Webster, and supplies everything. But the problem with Orsi is they can't build because they got no sewers. You've got to build sewers. That's what they've been waiting for 30 years for. Essentially, that's what I understand it. You're not going to build these places without sewers, which means sewers are definitely coming. So therefore, you may or may not get the expansion you want at Orsi. That's my impression. Again, I heard somebody say, who's going to pay for this? I think I heard it here, that there should be compensation if it comes through. I hope it doesn't go through, but if there should be compensation for people that are going to be paying for people to make money off of us. You go back up to the south, there's a subdivision there. It's only half done. Huge, high development is developed. I have the plans that were given to me for that subdivision to the south, and it says it's supposed to be maximum density up at the railway tracks. That's the part that hasn't been developed. You've got plenty of stuff up there. You don't need them stuck beside me. And what kind of mess are we going to see? People come down the road, nice house, what is this? So this isn't angry. I'm not angry. I do believe in development. I was happy when they came in behind it. What it did for me was took away the mosquitoes for one thing. But I can't see that with the density available, with Orsi probably available when you bring up the sewers, and that's what's going to run around. You're talking about the Nantyre School, Nantyre Shores. That's all part of that development there. They're just waiting to get sewers to go up there. Either that, or they got to put a pump in and try and pump it back up to where the sewers are. I think mistakenly, the head should have gone straight up the road, not allowed to go through Webster, or through Quarry and Webster. But we must speak with what we have. So I've talked about density and the Conservation Authority. When I built my house, and when my neighbors have built their houses, we were told you're in a floodplain. And that floodplain hasn't changed. In 1954, whatever it was when Hurricane Hazel came through, that became a floodplain. And Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority, or I guess Regional Conservation Authority, they have control over what's in there, what the flow of the water was. We were required to build 100 feet back, sorry, not 100, 80 feet back, because then you would be outside, just outside of the floodplain. Why? I guess I heard you haven't approached them yet, have you? The Lake Simcoe?
Through the mayor, yes, the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority has been circulated the application and they're reviewing.
Application, yes, but you haven't heard back from them yet.
Yep, they did provide comments, and they're requiring a flood delineation be submitted to confirm that the development is outside of the flood hazard.
What does that mean?
Thank you. Can I just before we do a back and forth, say that all of that will be on the website? Is that right? So you can read all of the comments from Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority on the website. Is that right, Ms. Morris?
I can definitely provide comments that Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority provided.
Just a quickie, is it positive or negative?
Positive for that.
They've approved it, have they?
They're requiring more information. They're requiring more studies be done, was what the answer is.
So I think that's pretty well all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And I don't want to, I just want to say one thing, Mr. Lambert, is whenever there's a development come, it is the responsibility of the developer to pay 100% of getting the services there. So the ORCs aren't waiting for us to do anything. They're maybe waiting to get financing. They can do it themselves. And the reason that the pipes go the way they go is because they're put in the ground by those developers who pay 100% of the cost. Just wanted to make that comment. Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, my name's Debbie Smith. I back on off of Booth Avenue onto the stormwater management, which for the last 21 and a half years that I've lived there, we've been told you're not supposed to be back there. Now this is showing a development with a pathway, and they're saying the kids will walk through here to access the school. We've also been fighting. Booth Avenue is 50 kilometers an hour, which is absolutely ridiculous. So you're going to have children coming out of the townhouses, walking around a pond that nobody takes care of and hasn't taken care of in the entire time I've lived there. And now you're going to put them on a road that is 10 kilometers less than Innisfil Beach Road. It's not safe. The area back there, it's a disaster. There was tons of trees taken down. The town didn't step up to put it back. Currently, we cut the easement to keep bugs, people leaving their dog droppings right beside our houses. When people were canvassing to be elected, when they came to the door and we said, oh, we take care of this, we were told, well, you're not even supposed to be back there. And now we're being told, well, this is how these children will get to school. I just don't see it. It's too many. We paid a premium when we bought those lots that we were backing onto an area that would remain the same. There would be nothing built back there. All the homes that are on 7th line, they would remain single housing dwellings. Now we're going to be in our backyards looking across, seeing 47 townhomes. No. It's not right for the area. If anything, I think it'll put our property values down because it's just being dropped right there. And as the other lady stated, there's considerable amount of land between 7th line and Webster on all four corners that something like this can be built. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Next, anybody?
Hi, I'm Nikki O'Neill. I also live in that subdivision off of Muriel. And my concerns are the discussion about the schools and how the children will then walk through the pond area to Lake Simcoe. Lake Simcoe already can't accommodate the children that live in these subdivisions. I'm fortunate enough that my daughter gets to go to Lake Simcoe. We are walking distance, but there are people within our subdivision that would be classified as the 6th line subdivision, which is connected to all of ours, that have to be bused already to Innisfil Central. And even with the current expansion that's happening during the school year to Lake Simcoe, it's only 2 kindergarten classes, 2 grade 1 classes, and 4 classrooms above. That's not enough to accommodate the need that is already there, let alone adding additional families that will need the resources that we already can't accommodate that is needed.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Again, Cheryl Birch. We live just down the street from the proposed development. We are separated by the protected lands, so it's not in our face. However, I do empathize with the neighbors. Understanding now that they also own the property right beside, sounds to me like they have a plan and they're hoping to move forward with it. And if 47 units is what's planned for that portion, I can only assume they're gonna throw up another 20-something on that corner. As far as parking goes, I am in and out of new subdivisions every day. And these 3-story townhouses have absolutely zero place on 7th Line. There is going to be no room for their vehicles. Like someone else said, I have 4 cars just in my family alone. My kids all drive. Anybody that moves into these townhouses, they may be starting out, but there will be 1 or 2 vehicles, if not recreational vehicles, that they're hoping to have in their garages instead of cars. And 7th Line is not somewhere they can park. So where are those vehicles going to go? The distance from the buildings to the road edge is a concern that I have, basically because we got flooded out last summer. Our property was deeply affected when both, I think there were 2 or 3 water ponds or sources, the river, everything just crested, flooded, 7th Line was shut down, and our property was, a good portion of our frontage was underwater. I think that saying that, I have had a look at some of the links Kirsten provided, and it appears that someone from LSRCA has said that they're not within the boundaries where there is concern, but I wholeheartedly disagree with that, because if the line was where it was when I applied for permit to do a reno, neighbors builded, that line is, yes, that line is well beyond where they plan to put buildings. So the floodplain is there. Whether or not LSRCA is going to agree or disagree, it definitely needs to be reconsidered. If they're not on sewers, am I understanding they're bringing sewers to the development? Yes? And as far as watershed goes, it's not being directed to the storm pond, but there's going to be an on-site holding tank for stormwaters. That tank, I mean, that's all gonna come up later, I guess, but I cannot imagine that that tank is gonna hold what it needs to hold. I've been affected, our property has been affected by site plans that were approved on the property behind us, and that water keeps coming to our home. So it's something that really, the watershed really has to be looked at. And then my biggest frustration with this whole process, I didn't hear about this. I don't know if I'm within, 120 meters. I consider myself to be a close neighbor to this property. I drive by it every single day. I did let Kirsten know that sign was not posted. It absolutely was not posted until Monday of this week. So the notice did not go out the way it should have gone out. And I think had it, there probably would have been a lot more people here to oppose this. 47 3-story townhouses has no place on that stretch from Webster to St. John's. No place whatsoever. I am absolutely in support of progress and development, I know that there are other huge plans for this town. I support it, but it needs to be thought out. It needs to, we have to think about what it's going to look like in the end. We have environmentally protected lands right across the road. The other question I have is about Seventh Line development. I have yet to see somewhere on the website or in correspondence that I can access what decision was made with the plan for Seventh Line, the improvement of Seventh Line. I have not been able to get my hands on it. I have asked many, many times, what are the plans? The last time I saw there, I think there was 2 or 3 options that were being considered, still no decision made. Now I'm hearing about a sidewalk on the south side of 7th Line, and that was nowhere near any of the options that I have seen. I am on the south side of 7th Line as well, so I would like to know if my property is going to be affected by 7th Line changes. I think that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Birch. And we can send you the link to the page on the website that has all of the studies on the 7th Line.
I've seen the studies.
Oh.
Want to know what decision, which plan are we going forward?
Okay. Director Lee, can you comment on that?
Your worship, I was actually just confirming. I will get that information to Ms. Birch.
Could you get the URC?
Yes.
We can ensure that the website has that updated information on the final decision that was made.
Thank you, Director.
Yeah, Henry Koistra. I live just around the corner from it. The 7th Line, Ms. Birch, it was approved about 5 years ago. Nothing's happened, and we haven't seen, I still, to the life of me, with the 7th Line running 4 lanes all the way to St. John's. What for? I don't understand 4 lanes to a 2-lane road. It doesn't make sense. I can understand up to Webster, and then you come past Webster and you go into 2 lanes. That's all you need.
That's what I thought was happening.
No, I was at the meetings 5 years ago, and it was all, they had public open house meetings here about it. 4 lanes all the way to St. John's. Like, what for? And every time I've driven past this piece of land, as far as I'm concerned, if Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority doesn't think that that's in the floodplain where it's always wet and it's very low, then there's something wrong with Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. Like, it's low. And if there's no sewer, and I don't think there's a sewer line on the 7th Line to service this property now from Webster to this proposed property, who's going to pay for that? I guess we are. Is there, like, can somebody answer that question?
Mr. Koistra, if this development were approved, it would be up to the developer to pay 100% of the cost of servicing their own land.
Yeah, so they would have to pay for this to get to wherever that sewer, the closest sewer line is to hook up. And so hopefully that would be done before the road widening so that they don't have to tear it up like a couple of weeks later.
Yeah, Mr. Koistra, I think you heard me ask Director Lee that when this report comes back, it talks about the 7th Line capital project and the timing of that.
So is in the capital project for the 7th Line, is it still 4 lanes all the way to St. John's?
We're going to get that information for you, Mr. Koistra.
Okay. Okay, anyway, that's, I just think it's totally in the wrong spot too. With the orbit, it should be able to handle enough people that we don't need to have it hodgepodge everywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Koistra.
I think this presents an investment.
Next.
Sorry, it's Nikki O'Neill again. Just a comment/question about the municipal servicing. So it's been said that the development will be responsible to pay for the lines to get to the development. But I used to live at the 10th Line and 25th Side Road, and when Friday Harbor went in, we were forced to pay to hook up to town water and sewers. And we got a reduced rate because Friday Harbor was paying the majority of it, but it was still $3,500 to hook up to municipal services. So there will be an impact to the properties that would be, yes, receiving services, but they did not choose this. And it will be a financial impact to those that will be affected in that area.
Thank you.
Unless that's changed. But
Thank
that
you.
was-
Yeah, we do have a policy on hookup. There's several options, and again, we can address that in the report.
Yeah, mine was about 6.5 years ago. So, wasn't that long.
Next. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Gail Smithson, and I live at 1037 Muriel Street, and I'm the corner house backing onto the path that comes out of the pond, and I just want to, I agree with what's being said, so I don't want to keep repeating it, but the safety, the pond, myself and my neighbor, Debbie Smith, has cut the easement. I've lived there 19 and a half years, and I'm the original homeowner, and the city has not looked after that easement. We've maintained it. We even have shoveled snow just going into that on the sidewalk that the town hasn't looked after. And there's no way that children could come from a 47 townhouses through there safely. And I sit there and I watch people walk their dogs through there, and it just isn't feasible. And as far as parking, like where are the people going to start parking down Booth Avenue and along Cal and all these streets because there's no parking? My sub pump runs continually. I've been told that my house is built on a swamp. And I don't see how that area with the pond can accommodate what we're proposing there. And also you're saying affordable housing, but no one can ask. I understand affordable housing. I have a son who's renting right now. He's a paramedic. His wife's a nurse. And yes, he's trying to get into the housing market. And what's affordable, no one can answer, what are you talking about affordable housing? Like 47 units, I don't even think, they aren't even saying it's going to be affordable. So I just want to reiterate that I don't think it's a place to build a townhouse, and there's the Webster and the 7th Line and other vacant lots at this time to propose this kind of town development.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, Mr. Koistra, is there anyone who hasn't spoke for the first time before we go up for seconds that would like to speak? Okay, Mr. Koistra, please be my guest.
Just one more thing. This question is directed to you. Is the 201 Never Ontario Inc., are you the current owner of the property, or do you have an offer to buy this if you can get it zoned properly?
Mr. Hudson is a planning consultant.
For the owner.
For the owner.
That's right, and I'm asking him if that owner he's working for is the current owner of the land.
Mr. Hudson, did you want to answer that?
Yes, we work for the owners of the property.
So they are the owners? Yes. Okay. Now, I'd like to know how it works. They get it zoned. Let's say they get it zoned for, you cut it down to 36. Why can't the town have a timeline when they have to be built, or it all goes back to the way it was? Same as the mayor's property over here. It's still sitting there with nothing on it, yet it's still zoned that they can have so many townhouses on it. Shouldn't be allowed. After a certain length of time, put it back to the way it was, original. That's my suggestion, because that's usually how it works. They get the proper, everything in place to build, then they put it up for sale to try and find somebody to develop it and build it. And then it sits and sits and sits, like the one at Webster at the northwest corner. And it sits there and grows weeds. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Koistra. I think that's a bit above our pay grade. I think that would be the Planning Act that would have to be changed, but I would go to Director Lee because I'm not a planner.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. So there are provisions in the Planning Act in terms of approvals. They are not done currently under the Planning Act at sort of an official plan or a zoning stage. They are done with the subdivision in the future. Bill 185 that is not in effect, but the province has just come out with, is looking to put provisions for site plan control so that councils can limit the time a site plan approval is given, but those provisions are not currently in effect. So the only permissions that this council can enforce right now are for subdivisions.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything they'd like to say? If you could just go, because there's people watching online.
Yes. Because of the sign not having been posted, there is a requirement to notify the public, and for a certain period, I'm guessing. So can we request for this to be done again with proper notice to the public, please?
I'll ask the planners that. What are the notification requirements under the Planning Act?
So through the mayor, the Planning Act requires that we provide notice of a public meeting 20 days before the public meeting date through a mailed notice to residents within 120 meters of the property and with posting of a sign. So we do have confirmation that the sign was posted on April 24th, which was 20 days before this public meeting. Unfortunately, that sign was removed, and Ms. Burge kindly notified me that it was not there on the property, which we found out about, I think, 2 weeks later. So we did do our best effort to put up a temporary sign on the 8th of May, and then we replaced the sign with a permanent sign on Monday of this week. In our opinion, the requirements of the Act have been met for notice.
Absolutely not.
Because the sign was posted.
The sign may have been posted, but if the person who lives there has anything to do with the owner, I can imagine that they were the ones that took it down. It was nowhere on site. Kirsten said that perhaps it had been knocked over. Nowhere on site. I drove by that house for a good week and a half since I saw someone else post a mailer online. That is the only way I knew about this. And once I saw that notice, which may have been a few days after the April 24th date, no sign was seen on that property until Monday of this week. So we're talking 3 days of notice, proper notice to the public. I'm sorry, but that 20 days was not met.
Director Lee, any comments on that? I mean, it is appealable. Like, if this passes, you have a certain length of time to appeal it, and you could appeal it on the fact that there wasn't enough notice. But Director Lee?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. Certainly, we'll take another look at that with the legal team as well in terms of the notification requirements and confirming that those requirements have been met and whether there is need for further notice.
100%, because if the person living there took that down or the owner of this property took that down, there's a reason.
I just wanted to add to that. I don't know if it's required that all, like where you can see the property has to have a sign. After we got that notice in the mail, which I would like to say came in an envelope and I almost threw it out because I thought it was just like propaganda. There was no sign posted along the fence line, which is very close to the pathway around the storm drain pond. And I would gather that many people who walk their dogs back there, had they known about this and seen that sign, there would be more attendance here tonight than you currently see as well.
Director Lee?
Mayor Dolan, if I can just clarify, so the Planning Act, which is that legislative requirement, requires the sign to be posted on the public street. So the sign is required to be posted on the 7th line, just in terms of the storm pond.
Anyone else? Please go ahead, Mr. Estevez.
Ask another thing, because when I bought my house, I'm on 1093 7 line. I put a pool on my backyard, and I couldn't I couldn't install an in-ground pool because there's a ease line on the property. So those properties all the way down, they have a ease line. Ease line's like wires on the ground instead of being on the posts. So they said I was not allowed to build nothing 20 to 30 feet in from the fence. So even when I bought the house, was there a big problem? Because the lawyer, my lawyer, found like a easy line, some line that is underground. So when I finished all the things with my house, was tight because of that, because we didn't know what was a easy line or something like that, that the wires go underground. So I couldn't build my pool underground, I had to put it on top. So what's going on their property with that line underground? What they're going to do? They're going to build a house on top of the east line?
I'm seeing the writing that down, which means that that will be answered when the report comes back. Maybe you meant easement?
Easement, yeah, that's an easement, yeah.
Yeah.
Easement, yeah.
So that will be responded to when the report comes back.
Yeah, because I couldn't even dig 20 feet from the fence in, 20 feet to 30 feet because of the line. That's my only concern. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll get you an answer. Anyone else?
That's in his backyard. Now, where you have the property, it runs 280 feet deep. Then at the back, it takes a jog, comes back to our properties, which are 200 feet deep. So it's basically, it's running about 20 feet from that 200 feet from the 7th line. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Just one more comment. I know it was brought up earlier. Sorry, Nikki O'Neill again. About the park space, recreational space. I know it was discussed earlier and brought up that there is no new proposal of any type of recreational space in this new development. So that would further be putting strain on the current public space, which the closest would be the park closest to Lake Simcoe. And that is in need of some love at this point. It needs a little bit of a redevelopment at this point. So you'd be putting further strain on resources that are currently needing some attention, and without additional park space and recreational space, you're going to be encroaching on those spaces as well.
Thank you, Ms. O'Neill. Anyone else? Last call? Mama Bear gets last call.
Always does. Mary Ligori. Honestly, all my neighbors and the residents in my neighborhood, because I do live on Muriel Street, they've all brought forward to what I wanted to say, so I don't need to repeat it. I am really against, I'm so sorry, but I'm against this. It's not gonna be safe. You guys already don't maintain the walkway from Muriel Street to the Previn Park during the winter. So for those kids that are gonna be moving into this proposed subdivision, you know, that's a way that they would like to go because it's a safe way through the park to the school. Also, too, overloading that school. That school is already being added on with the 8 classrooms and then that daycare, and there's already split classes of grade 1 and 2, which is totally unacceptable. How are you going to slam all that in? So with the Simcoe County District School Board saying they have no concerns, that's ridiculous. They should have concerns. That's all. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Actually, wait. And that road, and the road too, because right now with 7th Line, I know you guys are gonna get all that information, but with all the construction trucks and everything on that road, even right now with all the dump trucks coming through and everything, it's ruining the road. So if you guys are planning to redo that road, whether it's before or after, that road's gonna still be ruined again, and then potholes, and because like what Adrian said, the center of 7th Line, between Webster and 7th Line, you have to swerve to go around it to miss it. Or there's gonna be more claims to you guys for bent rims and tires and all of this, because I can tell you, I hit one the other day, wasn't happy, but I'm just saying, there needs to be more attention. And if you're gonna, bring this in, which I hope you guys will, I really wish you guys would pay more attention to maintaining the pathways then, especially the one from Muriel to Previn Park. Okay, Ben.
Thank you. Mr. Lambert.
Can I direct a question here? Is this going to be a gated community? Is it going to have a fence around it or a wall of any kind? For example, when
Mr.
we're
Hunter?
building it, is it going to have further down the road? There's a wooden fence that runs the length of it. Is this having a wooden fence around it?
Mr. Hunter?
Yes, I'll try to be loud.
Could you come to the mic, please, in case someone online?
So landscaping is a site plan control requirement. It is anticipated that there would be a closed board fence around the areas where it would be required, so adjacent to the single detached residential in the backyard. That's as far as we have gone, but it's not gated. There's no high fences, no gated fences that would be proposed.
Okay. And you've also stated that at least that's the way it sounded to me, that you have the next 2 properties between Quarry and your development. You already own that? Or you have access to it, or you will own it shortly?
And that'll come back in the next report, because we really can't talk about that tonight because it's not part of the application that's in front of us. But we've asked if it can be put together in the report that comes back to council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last call. Going once, going twice. All right, Madam Clerk, are there any members of the public that have sent an email to the clerk's office during this time?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, we have not received any correspondence or emails throughout this evening.
So we'll now go to the recommendation to receive the comments provided this evening. And, sorry? Go ahead, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to make a comment around something I'm calling piecemeal planning. And it's not our fault, it's not the town's fault, but I found that in the development that came to Stroud, we only found out after the submission that same developer owned the commercial property along Yonge Street. Sandy Cove Acres, we know that there are other developments going on around. And we found out tonight that there's another piece of property this developer might own. It makes it very difficult to make complete communities when you only see a piece of the pie. Now, I understand these are all infill type developments, but it would be really helpful and less frustrating for us to be able to build better communities if we knew what the whole picture was. So if this developer does have that extra piece of property, it would be nice to be able to see that at the same time as we're seeing this one here, as opposed to seeing this piece, then the next piece, then the next piece, because we always make decisions based on what we see in front of us. So it would be helpful for me anyways, I'm not too sure about the other councillors, to see the bigger picture so that we know what type of community resources are required to make a better community. So just a comment in general. Thank you.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes, through you, Mayor Dolan, to Councillor Waters. So I just have to make it clear, there's one owner here, a different owner, who also happened to hire me to do planning services. So although I would love to have both work together, their timelines didn't match up. So the best we can do is integrate the second development into the first. I just want to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
Thank you. So a mover and a seconder, please, to receive all of that information. Moved by Deputy Mayor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Constantine. Anyone who wishes to provide further comment may still do so and may register as an interested party to be contacted before this item is considered by council. So you can send your comments to clerksoffice@innisfil.ca. clerksoffice@innisfil.ca. And they'll make sure that members of council also get a copy of those comments. So all in favor of the recommendation to receive the information this evening? That is carried. Council thanks everyone for their participation, and we'll now go to the confirming bylaw and adjournment for this evening. Can I please have a mover and a seconder to adjourn at 8:39 and the confirming bylaw be passed? Councillors Waters, Councillor Richardson, all those in favor? That is carried. If you haven't already done so, please make sure you sign the interested party form on the way out.